Hey, it's Grayson here again. Wanted to come to you today on a thought about why the experts, or I'm going to put quotes, experts on personal development um, and basically the whole life repair industry fail a good deal of the American population, and also how some of the cultures that have come from these authentic places, these places where people have legit problems and have found ways to solve them, have kind of gotten kicked to the side, thrown away, or subsumed into this new internet techno driven view of personal development and resolution for a variety of issues related to a lot of times economic and health empowerment in particular. And I'm using those particular terms rather than the terms that some of these people like to use, like grow your business or lose weight, because I think that we need to look at things on a more global level, and that's where I'm going to start. When you have a problem in your own life, you start to think of yourself versus the first unit typically of what exactly is going on. And it takes a few leaps to get to the system. And you tend to look very commonly at the immediate context of it. Like if you have some sort of financial issue, you start to look at things that directly relate to finances. You don't go 3, 4, 5 steps out to see what that is. And for that particular case, there was a YouTuber who apparently he's successful doing marketing related work and has a YouTube channel discussing this by the name of Alex Becker, who put up a video. I'll link it in the description. Who was saying that people who are failing in business related areas, they're not getting the type of results they need to in business. Are oftentimes not doing so because of environmental factors, which is something that I've thought about for quite some time. But the way he takes it and the conceptualization he has of this is skewed by his own experiences and is skewed less so toward a large portion of the population that is disempowered and really, really needs the help, which is the sad part. And even with this additional extra step he takes, which I really appreciate, not just saying, okay, do this, you're gonna get rich, do this, you're gonna get rich, do this, your financial problems will be done, but actually looking at, oh yeah, this person may not be experiencing good enough of health, or this person may not be sleeping, or there are other factors. I like what he did from there, but he didn't take it far enough, in my opinion. So we're coming up against New Year. A lot of people are going to set like New Year's resolutions and like goals they have for themselves. So sticking to this particular context, so like making more money. So people will immediately think of, okay, there are these courses out there that'll help me with doing stuff like social media marketing, things like that. That entire world to me, even though I kind of live in it, to borrow a phrase from the Bible, I'm in that world and not of it, and I don't even feel comfortable sometimes being in that world. But people think of doing those kinds of tactics, which he says, okay, it may not work because you are not at your best performance. But let's think about why a person who is struggling financially and needs help is not at good performance. He'll just say, you need to focus more. You need to focus more, which is prima facie correct. But then you get a few more layers deeper into the surface than he even goes, then you start to have stuff kind of break down into things that are not immediately covered. So he says, well, okay, it's because you're constantly checking your phone, because you have distractions, you have disturbances in your life. He kind of alludes to you have personal responsibilities, you have things you have to do in your personal life that may be distracting you from doing things in your business. And then he says, okay, you're also distracted because you have some issues with your health, which he links back to diet problems and saying that you need to do cleanses, which cleanses are a completely different subject. Science is pretty darn questionable on that kind of stuff. I would say a lot of it is probably closer to quackery than evidence-based medical practice, but that's a completely different subject. And you need to improve your diet, make your health better so you can be more successful. So starting with personal disruptions, he says, okay, you need to shut out everything while you're working, shut out every single part of your world, not be available to be contacted for anything. No phone, no email. He says, delete all your social media, delete every app on your phone. He says he has, quote, one app on his phone. So let's talk about why, in many cases, that's just simply not a tenable option. We have somebody who is a young mother who has a kid in school, and she needs to be available if her kid is sick and her kid needs to be taken home, or if school's calling her or something like that, or somebody who's taking care of an aging parent. Or you may be somebody who's gotten caught up in the criminal justice system. And you have calls from lawyers. You have to be available to report to people related to that, or have people calling you back who may not be able to call you back for some time. Anytime you're dealing with bureaucracy, that can be kind of a distraction in and of itself. Now to this whole health, and you're not eating well, you're not doing cleanses and all that kind of stuff. He actually brings up this really weird example of a guy who is, quote, in his mother's basement, doesn't have any money, and I don't know how he said it, but basically the guy was an amputee. And he says that person should, quote, get a peg and go work at Walmart, and so they can produce money so they can become successful. I have a slight disability myself, which I've kind of gone into a little bit on this channel, but I think he fails to appreciate and understand how difficult it is for somebody with a disability to get any kind of employment, and then the amount of mental drainage that will not allow you to do all this kind of optimal performance kind of stuff, and the fact that you have to decompress. Honestly, after listening to that guy's voice, which I have to talk about this, the voices of these, like, I personally have a difficulty tolerating how successful people speak, because there's this is how it is, you have to work harder, you have to make more money. That, like, barking type linguistic pattern, to me, I just find it very disturbing, and it's draining to me. I think it's probably my own cultural leanings, but I literally have to decompress and only watch these kinds of videos for only a few minutes at a time. If I can tolerate it for that long, stop it, take a break, stop it, take a break, and then afterwards I just have to kind of re-ground myself, actually. And that same kind of stuff can happen to you with a sucky job, and it doesn't allow you to, like, immediately, like, switch directions, like you're switching to running from one side of a b-ball court to the other. You can't, like, change directions that quickly in your mind when you're dealing with that kind of stuff. And then if you're working at Walmart making a low wage, he wants you to invest, I guess, in, like, all these different, like, health solutions for yourself, alternative health stuff, which I'll tell you, probably a lot of it is helpful, maybe not even helpful for the reasons that they say it's helpful, but those kinds of things can do a lot of good for people. But it's a matter of that stuff not being accessible. And I understand, appreciate why he would not. Oh, my door here. It's a little windy out here, but I can understand, appreciate why he doesn't go into this stuff in detail. But this is an illustration of there are people out there that have a ton of problems in their life. They're not allowing them to not even just be successful. I don't like using that word too much because it's really ambiguous. As John Foreman of Switchfoot says, this ain't my American dream. I want to live and die for bigger things. I'm tired of fighting for just me. And that encapsulates how I think of these kinds of things. So that word success just kind of doesn't make it needs to be adequately contextualized. So what that shows is that he's acknowledging there are reasons why these kinds of strategies wouldn't work, not to even go deeper than just the individual level of why these solutions for helping people grow their businesses are not helping with economic empowerment of a large group of people. And I love how instead of using like Occupy uses the 99% and the 1%, he was like 98% and 2%. Love how he uses that. So I don't know if he thought of this, if Mr. Becker thought of this like cognitively, but if you just kind of switch things up a little bit, you don't trigger that reaction that 99% and 1% is. That Occupy Wall Street, we need to change the system mindset. And we need to understand how to work through the system and work around it and work with people. So, might have been a cognitive trick, might have just been his authentic thought, might be coincidence, don't know. But we have case in point here. So, where do we go from here? Now that we know that a lot of these solutions that are put out there, frankly, by people that are probably a lot more successful, that are part of, he admits he's part of that 2%, not the 1%, but the 2%, which roughly, statistically, probably near the same thing. Now that we know that those solutions don't work, so where do we start from? Well, we have another culture that kind of has this sort of motivational, get stuff done kind of thing, but that was sort of a grassroots upward empowerment movement rather than this technocratic movement, and unfortunately they've kind of gotten subsumed. And I know some of you are going to start to sound like a broken record, but my mom, who is probably qualified enough to have her own YouTube channel in the field of business success, because she had some success as an executive for some major television networks. She says, tell them and tell them again. So I'm going to tell you and tell you again. The culture that kind of sprung out of punk rock, the DIY culture, combined with something called PMA, DIY, do-it-yourself, PMA, positive mental attitude. That culture arose from a lot of the same kind of discontent that you actually see in what today we have is the alt-right, and also sort of like a combination of alt-right and the social justice warrior. I hate using that term too. Communities. So you'll hear, like, for example, I like to point to a song by a band called H2O, Black Sheep. I'll never find my place in 9 to 5 world's one of the lyrics in the chorus, but he starts it out with saying, there's very little difference in people, but that little difference makes a big difference. That difference is attitude, and the big difference is whether it's positive or negative. Got to keep that PMA. So you have that motivational aspect there. But since this stuff comes from the bottom, it recognizes, and not just in a passing, like, go get your stuff cleaned up, excuse me, kind of attitude, but it recognizes that stuff's reality. So you go a few songs back in that album, which is FTTW by H2O, if you want to look it up. There's a song called Empty Pockets. All this politics is deception of America's dream. And then it's not about, I think he says it's not about the racists or the education. I should have really had these lyrics in front of me. Yeah, I'm disorganized and I'm unfocused. I'll admit that. I'll admit that 110% to you guys. So basically, the whole point of the song is that we're doing all these things wrong. We have all these things wrong in our community because of empty pockets. We're selling what we've got. We're having problems with the cops, stuff like that. All because of empty pockets, living in a different place because of empty pockets, referring to like displacement, not being able to keep housing, stuff like that. And so you have that positive attitude stuff, but then you're also recognizing the systemic challenges. You're recognizing that there is a system around you that is causing you to have these problems in your own life. It's not just your own context. It's not just that your health sucks. It's not that your food sucks, your dietary habit sucks. It's that the environment around you is not necessarily conducive to that, and it's difficult to change these kinds of things. So, and then from there, when you get to that point of understanding that there's a problem systemically, you have a few choices. You have sort of the way Mr. Becker kind of goes to, which is just change stuff yourself. Just change stuff yourself. Without recognizing the existence of the system. Then you have the option that I would say a lot of progressive Democrats choose, which is just wait for stuff to happen electorally, politically, wait for it to change around you and do stuff focused on that. And then you have option 3, which option 3 is what I prefer. Recognize the existence of a systemic problem and develop the solutions based upon solutions either through political means or through individual build upward means, that DIY ethos, that acknowledge the existence of a systemic problem and not ignore the existence of a systemic problem. So you kind of go through that same process of like, let's start making our own stuff, but let's do it with an acknowledgement that the system is flawed and that this is a problem that we're all having. So you're able to sort of do this kind of stuff in community rather than every man for himself and trying to struggle on your own. And then you start to sort of build organizations and your own systems upward and outward, and sometimes you get recognized by the system. And sometimes they decide to include you. That's one of the benefits of living in a more liberal democratic country like we have here in the United States, that sometimes you get recognized, sometimes you get thrown a bone by the system, and you have to kind of carefully manage and plan that stuff out. And that's why my type of expertise in politics is still useful if you're going to build a DIY culture, DIY approach to solving complex problems, is because you're still going to have to work with, at some point, everything that's around you, even as you start to build upward and outward. And as H2O says, attitude is really important. And it's not just the attitude, it's not really as much the attitude of yourself, it's both the attitude of yourself and it's the attitude of the people that are talking to you. So attitude is a two-way street. So if you hear this attitude, this person's like, I'm barking at you, you need to get better, you need to do this, you need to do that, and that doesn't comport with how you think, how you live, how you view yourself, your values, your morals, what you want for yourself, that message might as well have been spoken to a brick wall. So even if it's the right message, even if some of the things that are being said are right, it's how you say it and who is saying it and how it acknowledges your intersectional categories and the methodologies of intersectionality that affect us, our individual institutional relations, the diversity within, things like that, that makes the difference. Just the way it says and the people you're doing it with makes a considerable difference. And that context means everything. And making yourself feel bad because you can't live up to a standard that wasn't made for you is futility, and it's not a good idea, because these ideas and these systems of so-called personal development weren't made for people like us. They're made for people like them. There's that 2%. It's not really made for the 98%. It's made for, it's kind of made for them and made for people that are in close nexus with them. So we need a different kind of approach. And I've been kind of getting down on myself because I'm like, I can't think like business people. I can't think like business people. Like, I don't like even listening to the sounds of their voices, thinking like how a business person thinks. I don't like that attitude. And I'm like, okay, is there a place for me? The thing is that the answer may be no, especially that a lot of these alternative cultures have gotten subsumed into this whole tech, motivational, internet, Instagramification of society. They've kind of gotten subsumed. So you have the people who are like, who would have been back in the day, would have been the DIY punks that are now just social media influencers that love this whole technologically created culture. So if you still feel that like that's wrong, and you feel like that you need a different attitude, then you're kind of lost. But you go back and you're like, okay, you need to make it for yourself. And that's kind of why I'm starting this channel, because I know that anything that I want done, that I want it done in a way that works with my culture and the cultural leans of those around me and with our lifestyles, is going to have to be done ourselves. We have to, if you want it, you have to do it yourself, basically. And it's easier said than done. It borrows maybe a little bit of these tactics, but it's also with a lot of other stuff and a lot of extra context. And I think there's a market for it. I think there are a lot more people out there that if these gurus are talking about the failings of their own approaches, there got to be a lot more people out there that are like, I'm just stuck in my life. I can't fix this. None of these people are helping. And by adding that context, it can make a big, big difference. And I think that as we start to build more and more inclusive visions and systems for success for the rest of us, we can start to build something great. And it doesn't have to be so defeating. You don't have to walk into a room of people of success and esteem and be afraid that they're better than you. You're just different. There's a different path, and there's enough space on this world to have these different paths. It's an iterative process that takes time, and it's something that you can't rely upon somebody to tell you what to do. So it's a lot harder. And just keep in mind, take it from the descendants. You're not a loser. You've just chosen something different, and you are looking at the whole of your structure. And I'm going to try to do this. I have a lot more questions than I have answers, so don't look to me as your guru. I'm not your guru. I'm not smart enough to be your guru. But let's just go about this together. So if you want to put in the comments section something you're going through that you feel like personal development tactics haven't really helped you with, go ahead and comment that. I might just respond to you. We can kind of work through these situations together. For those of us who have problems in our lives that we can't like go out and hire a house manager to run our house. We still have to deal with our own lives, but we still need to also build something out to start changing our lives and change the system where we live in. And I hope I can count you as a partner in this, or at the very least, if you've made it or you're comfortable where you are, that you'd be an ally and you'd say, these people aren't half bad. People of different racial backgrounds, people of different socioeconomic backgrounds, people of different cultural backgrounds aren't that bad. And even if they don't comport with the technocratic view of success, they're still good people and they have something great to contribute to society. Like and subscribe if you like what you saw, and God bless you all.